So welcome, Ty. You just emailed me a couple days ago. Never talked to you before. For anyone who's watching, I'm Julie Beeling with Beneath Sheep's Clothing, and this is TyKing. And sounds like you have a really interesting story, Ty, with previously participating with Antifa and having walked away from that a few years ago. So I'm excited to kind of ask you about your experience with that and where you're currently at and what caused you to walk away from Antifa, I guess. But before I ask you what caused you to walk away from Antifa, I'm curious as to what caused you to join Antifa.
Well, so I guess to try to figure out the best way to put it. So I'm born in 1997, so I'm currently 27 years old at the time. So my entire life, my entire frame of perception has been post 9/11. So essentially every single president in my lifetime has been a criminal, a crook, a warmonger, and it just happened with Bush, Obama. It doesn't really matter. I believed at the time when Donald Trump was elected that there was finally this moment where everybody kind of realized, oh, the president of the United States is a bad guy, never truly understanding the arguments of what it meant for him being an outsider, never truly understanding that this was a different candidate as opposed to all the other ones. And, unlike candidates like Joe Biden weren't coming into the White House with a current kill count already. So jumping on that moment, rather than taking the time to research, rather than taking the time to center, rather than taking the time to have conversations with people who actually supported Trump rather than demonizing them, it became a campaign of, okay, let's get the president of the United States, essentially. And I joined in with the groups and we did a lot of stupid shit.
Yeah. Yeah, I guess, okay, I guess before we go more into that, I'd love to hear a little bit more about like your background. So you were born in 97. Um, just out of curiosity, like what kind of viewpoints were you raised with?
I was definitely raised in a Southern Baptist conservative household. Most of my family was Southern Baptist. My grandfather, who I spent at least every week with on the weekends, he was the pastor of First Baptist Church down in Odessa, Texas. So very faith-based, but simultaneously, family is just batshit insane. So the older I got, the more I was kind of looking at their views, being like, okay, guys, what are you guys on about? But looking back in hindsight as an adult, really not that bad people. But that was my raising growing up, and I kind of was a rebellious kid. I was a troublemaker. I was on all sorts of medications from a really young age, probably 5th, 6th grade, ADHD medication, bipolar medication, antipsychotics, pharmaceuticals being crammed down my throat. The schools basically required that I start taking medication or be kicked out of the schools, spend some time in a mental hospital. Around 6th grade, my mom was seeing the impact it was having on me, and her and my father wanted to get us away from Odessa, Texas. So we moved to North Texas at the time. And it was good for a few years until I had so many behavioral issues that my mother broke down and sent me to live with my biological father, who was different from my adopted father. And then I went to go live in South Texas for a while, and it was abuse, it was torment, being locked down, realizing that this man I'd never seen my entire life was a complete monster. I was in a tattoo shop that was 24/7. So we were the only tattoo shop in town. We had the gangsters, we had the white supremacists, we had the Mexican mafia, we had everybody coming through. And I ain't coming on here to like air anybody's dirty laundry because that ain't my place. But I saw a lot of different types of people that after leaving my father, after going off and going to college and dropping out because I had a drug problem, and getting involved with these liberal activist groups, that I took my pain and twisted the stories in my head and twisted the perception of what was really going on around me, and took my daddy issues and took the white supremacy and intertwined them. And there was just this cult waiting for people like me to jump on it, essentially.
Wow. Yeah, I mean, that's quite a colorful upbringing, everything from super conservative Christian to exposure to all kinds of interesting elements, maybe not so healthy elements, and then dealing with a lot of issues of your own. So you feel like you were rebellious like pretty much most of your life, or like did that?
Yeah, I think it changes in how it went. When I was a kid, I'd be more liberal. So a lot of my family were very anti-Muslim because they were very pro-Christian and paying attention to what was happening in the Middle East. And
Uh,
to So from a young age, I kind of like had the perception in my head. I'm like, you guys really want to go against the Muslim from coming against the Christians, and kind of being dismissed as crazy from a young age. And whether it was my own thought or being put in my head, it's been there from a very young age. Like, oh, you're kind of right growing up. And then it just kind of changed. When I left my father, my form of rebellion was going to college and joining an LGBT and cocaine. And then when Texas, it was a form of rebellion of, oh, let's go join this communist movement and go after the police. And now my form of rebellion is, oh, that was completely wrong. We need to atone for that. We need to fix that. So now I'm rebelling against everything over there, trying to be like, no, guys, we got to get this shit together. So I'm always just in a constant state of rebellion that's just always evolving, I guess.
Well, I mean, we're all wired differently. I have a rebel streak through me as well. But not, might not be visible, but I definitely have that rebellious streak, and my son has
I see it.
Definitely has a rebellious streak too. And we need all kinds of people in our society, or else it would, just be boring. But I'm really glad that you're, wanting to talk now and share what you've learned and kind of give a warning to people. So as far as joining Antifa, so you were vulnerable on a few accounts. You have the rebellious nature, as you mentioned. You had some traumas, and you were looking for something different. Was there anything else in terms of like joining Antifa that was kind of alluring to you, just out of curiosity?
Oh, I'm sorry, you cut out for a sec there. What was that question?
Yeah. Was there anything else besides just being rebellious? And I guess you've mentioned like anti-war. Is there anything else that was alluring to you about Antifa that caused you to want to participate with it?
For as anti-religious as I wanted to claim to be, as anti-God as I wanted to claim to be, I've never been able to get rid of the sense that there is something greater going on. And I tried to explain this in the Buck Angel podcast, but I got kind of sidetracked and lost my train of thought. But basically what I tried to explain to him was that there, like whatever you want to call it, 45D shift, you want to call it rapture, judgment, whatever is happening, there is a spiritual awakening on this planet. And I believe that groups like Antifa are a spiritual trap. And I believe that I believe the government knows that there's more going on spiritually in this world. At least the elites know there is an active effort to stop whatever this awakening is. And groups like Antifa and all these extremist organizations, they are there to catch anybody who may be going towards light, may be going to try and find that meaning, and then to twist it, and then literally to put you in a group full of people, self-reported Satanists. I mean, it's what it is. And so there's definitely a spiritual aspect to it, I think.
Yeah, definitely. I mean, and that's similar to, just from my research of communism in the Soviet Union. I mean, there were a lot of elements of society of Russia in the early 20th century that were very discontented with the status quo, and the Marxists were able to capitalize on that. So you mentioned Satanism, and yeah, I've seen that there definitely seems to be a strong element of Satanism with Antifa. Was that overt in your experience, or was it kind of just a little piece of the puzzle, or what role did Satanism play with Antifa in your experience?
I think that Satanism in Antifa and in the far left protests in general, like you see it at the abortion rallies too, it's something for the creatives to play with. And like you could tell by my background, I got like a dark taste. I got a little Buddhist head with a little Joker smile on there. I got a little weird trinkets, to be sure. But the point with Satanism in the protest is to be as shocking as possible, to piss off as many Christians as possible. Most of the people I knew who were into it, they weren't reading Anton LaVey. They weren't really interested in what Satanism or the Church of Satan or any of this really was. And to be frank, I don't think I really cared that much either. Like, it's very interesting, but it was never really my driver. But a lot of these people don't care about the philosophies or the ideology. They just care about pissing off mommy and daddy at the end of the day. And that's kind of what it's good for.
Yeah. It probably works pretty effectively for that, for sure. Like, how many people that you participated with are still with Antifa, as far as you know?
I mean, in their heads, a fair chunk. Like, I mean, I cut it down to where I only have 2 people in my life from that era that I have any contact with, and they weren't involved with the politics or any of this at all whatsoever. They're just living their lives, and I'm the crazy one out of the bunch. Everyone else I had to drop off with. But yeah, a fair amount of them I know are still there, are, drug addicted, going through some crazy shit. I've known a couple that have gotten into some batches of fentanyl, uh, just kind of spiraling. And then there's the ones who they've left Antifa, they've left the groups, and they want to pretend like it was just this little flash of history that happened. And even though they might be wrong on the events and what transpired, it was just an emotional time. And that's okay, so long as you move on and don't think about it. But they're moving on and not thinking about it is by going into the colleges whose policies were changed by the protest. So now I see a lot of people that are going into school and they're going into studies, and what they're coming out with is stuff that we at the protests and the riots were demanding that the colleges say. So it's like they're not really walking away from it.
Wait, give me an example of what you were demanding.
Well, I mean, like at the time, for example, you see it in the colleges, the concept of there being more than 2 genders, or recognizing non-binaryism, or a lot of these non-biological, non-scientific stances to where it's like, believe whatever you want to believe. We need to have fact-based reality at the end of the day, and we need to have that being put into the schools. So you have all this genderqueer ideology coming in, you have CRT, you have all this racial politics stuff. And from what I was seeing, it was the people with the bats and the machetes and the guns that showed up saying, we're going to burn this down or beat you up if you don't change these rules. And now the rules are there. And now a lot of the people that dropped off to protest, well, they're just going to get their education now.
Got it. Yeah. So what kinds of stuff did you do when you were Antifa? Were you involved in any protests?
I probably went to at least maybe 20, maybe 25 protests. I tried to go to a lot of the ones I could, and there's a lot of minor ones, and then there's a few big major ones. A lot of it would be going in, making sure people with American flags weren't creeping around, taking tabs on who had a Confederate flag, who has the Gladstone flag, who looks like they might be a pretender, who shouldn't really be here, and going to different people in the group and being like, this is what I've seen, this is what I've seen, having conversations with them, operating that way. A lot of the times, in hindsight, looking back, people I didn't even know. Like, I had groups of people going out there that I knew, but there was people that I was reporting to that I never met before in my life. I just felt obligated to, and they would encourage the crowd to feel obligated to do so as well. And I've been talking to feds for all I know, like, realistically. But there's a lot of cognitive dissonance. There was the protest where I went in and I wanted to try to do the right thing, and I wanted to have the conversations. I had a jacket that it was black on the outside and camouflage on the inside, so you could take it off and then you could flip it. Well, when you're wearing black, you look like when you're with the left. When you're wearing camouflage, you look like you're with the right. And then I also have a Punisher tattoo here, which is, it's Marvel. It ain't nothing for the cops. But I was able to flash that from a distance, and people on the conservative side would see that, and they'd nod their head at me, and they'd let me through the crowd. So I was able to kind of play with people's mental state a little bit, because everyone's so hyped up, they're not really thinking about what's going on. They're just basing everything off of visuals. So there was definitely a more violent streak towards the middle, I think. At first it was, I want to go in and do good. And then it was, the cops are coming after us and I don't know why, and I want to fight the police. And then it was, I have to talk to these people because we're the smart ones. They may be dumb, but they have the guns. This is my thinking at the time. And the more I went over to the other side to talk with them, the more I realized that what they were telling me was going on over there, what I was seeing was simply not correct. There was people there who were faith-based, who were praying, who were telling stories, who were trying to put their own message out. Quite frankly, people more like yourself than foaming at the mouth white supremacists. Like, the vast majority of people there were just normal, everyday Americans. And the more and more those blinders came down, and the more and more I had conversations with people who were willing to be there and speak with people like me, whether they thought I was a part of them or not. And a couple of them I let know, like, yeah, I'm actually over there. This is insane. Thank you for speaking with me. It just changed the whole perception, and it just kind of goes to show no one there wanted to talk. They just wanted to fight. If we actually went and there were thousands of people in one area and everybody was talking, that would be so dangerous to the government. But it didn't happen, and it's obvious why.
Yeah, definitely. So I had an interesting experience a few years ago. I guess it was in 2020, right after like George Floyd. And where I live in southern Utah, there was someone posted in a Facebook group that there was going to be a BLM march. in my little tiny conservative area. And then this guy piped in who was bragging about being an Antifa officer. And I checked him out, and lived in Salt Lake, and we had some friends in common. I lived in downtown Salt Lake for a while, and there's lots of colorful sorts of people that I was connected with living downtown Salt Lake. But this guy was bragging, and he claimed that Antifa has a structure, like a military like structure. Do you have any knowledge of that? I'm just curious.
I didn't get as high up as a lot of people. What I can say, and I'd be happy to give you specifics behind the scenes, because I don't want to put anything out that might put someone in danger.
Yeah.
But there were a lot of downtown business owners who owned a large section of downtown Eugene, that were funneling a lot of money into these protests, that were there bailing people out, encouraging their employees to go out and protest and do what they felt was right. And when people got arrested, they were there to bail them out in a second. And a lot of these businesses were the businesses that, when it came to COVID policy, they came down the hardest. When you walk by them, they have the rainbow flags, the Ukrainian flags. A lot of downtown Eugene, I believe, is a political hub, and that there is a lot of rich people in charge here, and that they make the poor people and the peasants feel good, and they make all the gays and the black people feel good, but all they really care about at the end of the day is their wallets.
Right.
And I don't know how much of that was intentional, or how much of it was just them thinking they were doing the right thing and just tossing their money willy-nilly. But as far as the military structure, I mean, I run my mouth too much. There's only so much certain people would tell me, because I have no problem telling off somebody to their face, hey, I think you're being racist, or you're being fucked up. Like, so I can only get so far. But from what I've seen and the way people behaved, and the way sometimes certain groups seem to come in and they seem to be a little more put together than other groups. Yeah. And then there was also a lot of veterans as well. People who were very upset with what happened to the military. Most of those people I noticed had been in the military a very short time. We're talking like 30, maybe early 40-year-olds. So it wasn't like older veterans of like Vietnam, Korea, anything like that. It would have been recent wars, if any.
Right. So from my understanding, Antifa operates in semi-autonomous cells. Do you have any comments on that, on the structure of Antifa?
Yeah, I think there's probably definitely some controlled cells. There's probably some federal cells. There's probably, like I said, the veterans and the groups getting together. There's probably some downtown cells. And then there's just cells as in the groups of just friends getting together who smoke pot, drink together, and then just want to go out and protest. It's so diverse. It's so all over the place. And I think that's to make it seem like on the surface level, like it's more innocent than it actually is. But the more you see with your own eyes, like a lot of what these conservative pundits or people have been coming out and saying in regards to Antifa, I'm like, yeah, I 100% can believe it. Especially after January 6th, where you have footage of a January 6th police officer being like, yeah, we have people dressed out there as Antifa. They have guns with little tags on the end of the barrel. Like, make sure you don't shoot them. Like, they can't make it any more obvious at this point.
Yeah. What else do Americans need to understand about Antifa? Like, what is the threat that Antifa poses to freedom, to conservatives?
Well, as far as conservatives, you're the enemy.
Mm-hmm.
Cis, white, Christian, all the buzzwords. We know all the freaking buzzwords.
Right.
A lot of people, they think it's a joke when they do it, and like they're joking and passing, or that they're just chumming it out with their buddies when they say these things. But when push comes to shove, get a little bit of drink in them, get in front of a fire in front of a downtown building. They believe it.
Mm-hmm.
They truly, truly believe it. And I think the threat when it comes to America is this is people's kids. Yeah. Like, you know, it sounds like my background's crazy and really fucked up, but really I'm probably more representative of the average American 27-year-old than anything that TV might let you believe. Like, a lot of the people there I met were messed up and had really dark stories and things that were way worse than me. Mm-hmm. And, you know, with this whole victim mindset of the younger generation looking up to mental illness, looking up to anger and lashing out, looking out to all this unwellness, we were their heroes. There were kids that were coming from the high school and the middle school that were coming out to protest that they should not have been coming out to. And they wanted to be like us. That's the scary part. So when especially you have schools that are being like, yeah, we're going to let you go out of school today and you're going to protest, and yeah, guns are bad and go queer this and race politics, and they're like literally sending them out to go to the street to the protest, who do you think's there to greet them? We were there saying, thank you for being here, you're doing the right thing, please, please come out and support us. Trying to like hype them up and make them feel good. And all the trauma and pain that I got from going to the protest, all the violence I've witnessed, Lord knows how many children are going to go and witness the exact same thing, if not worse, because this is only going to get worse before it gets better.
What
So
kinds
a
of
lot of this,
what kind of violence did you witness at the protests?
At one point, we were behind a group of LRADs that split off, and it was probably less than 10 feet away from me. LRAD goes off. I'm in a crowd of people. Everybody takes off screaming. Tear gas starts flying around us. We're breaking through backyards, running through alleyways. There were points where the cops would be following a large group of protesters. We would go to construction zones and we would rip down the construction fencing, and we would take the cones and we would take anything we could, and we would create barricades in the middle of the roads to block off the police. And then when we get to the other side, we would just be like hurling rocks or whatever we could, debris, trying to back them off.
So a war.
know,
It was essentially a war zone almost.
Yeah, and the sounds too, running away from the LRAD, that was, I tell the story in Buck Angel. I don't want to go too in depth to it because it fucks me up every time I talk to it. But they gave us 3 minutes, a group of over 1,000 people, 3 minutes to walk away, and a whole parade convoy of vehicles split off with every single group that backed off. And we had the countdown. And as soon as they got to 1 and that LRAD went off, it was game on. There was journalists. There was a journalist behind the LRAD who got assaulted by the police officers and arrested. But like Buck Angel said in his podcast as well, playing devil's advocate, which I completely agree with, the cops would not have been there had we not been causing destruction, had we not been behaving in the way that we were behaving. So I have a gripe with the police. I'm not going to sit here and pretend like I don't, but at the same time, we created those conditions.
Mm-hmm.
And
LRAD is tell me, I mean, I have an idea of what that is, but can you tell me what that is exactly?
Yeah, I think the way to describe it's like sonic weaponry. It just kind of goes off and it just starts chirping really loud, and it's like, but it's the loudest sound you've ever heard in your entire life. Your bones will shake, your organs will jiggle. It's like you feel it throughout your entire body, and what it's meant to do is to immediately put a sense of fear into you and do exactly what I did and run the hell away. And as we were doing that, like I said, rubber bullets, tear gas, a lot of the basically all the tear gas used at most of the protests during the 2020 air riots, that was expired tear gas canisters. Because from my understanding, the French government during the Occupy Wall Street movement cut off the United States from being able to buy tear gas canisters. So from my understanding, all the tear gas canisters we have been sitting on the shelves for years. So they're expired. They're toxic. So you had a lot of people that were going to the hospital, women and people on hormones specifically, who their periods weren't ending, or their hormonal systems were out of balance, or they were fainting. There was all sorts of weird like side effects that were happening to people at the same time as a tear gas from people, around it. And when I got back home after that night, running away from the LRADs and almost getting run down by either a cop or a militia vehicle, I'm not sure which, we had the smell of tear gas in my house for 3 days. My dog was breathing in tear gas for 3 days. Every single time someone was doing construction around the road and hitting a hammer, I'm like freaking out, thinking shots are going off again. I'm like sitting in my room, I'm fucking crying, I'm fucking shaking, I'm drinking myself to death. Like all of a sudden it's like the war is here. And at the time, I believed that it was, the cops I believed them to be a strong arm of Donald Trump. And essentially in my head, it was like, Donald Trump's come for us. But then again, over time, like I said, I just try to take time to educate myself and realizing how complex the situation really got. Yeah. And as far as kids, there was like a 14-year-old girl at one of these protests, and she apparently got her head slammed into the ground by police. When I was running away from the car that was trying to run us over, I looked over and there was LRAD driving by, but there was these cops hanging out and they had guns. And there's these little kids running by and they just shot them in the back with tear gas canisters and took them to the ground. And I couldn't stop to help. I had to keep running. So like you're hearing explosions and you're hearing screams and you're running away from a car that's trying to ram you every time you're going. You're seeing drones in the sky following people. and you're watching kids get hit, and there's not a fucking thing you can do about it. And what I want the American people to realize is this is your future. This is all of our future. This is not going anywhere.
No.
You know, as of today in Russia, national nuclear drills. Here in the United States, we've had war plans off all night. I've been looking at this shit all morning. Like, the bombs are ready to go. And if one single nuclear bomb drops in Ukraine or Russia or the United States or wherever, then this is going to be outside your doors for most Americans, I truly believe.
I mean, there's any number of things so this Antifa officer, as he claimed to be, he was bragging on Facebook back in 2020. He said, "Oh, don't worry, when the time is right, we have Antifa cells in every town in America, just waiting for the call to go into the streets and to create chaos." And does that sound about right to you?
It sounds about right, and it actually sounds very familiar to the threat that Carrie Lake put out in her leaked audio recently, where she had the GOP chairman come over claiming to be with the elite from the East. And he's like, you know, if you decide to tell anyone about this conversation, we have cartel members activated in all 50 states, and it'd be a shame if something happened to you. I hear no difference between that and what you just told me right now.
Yeah, definitely. I mean, it's too late for me. I'm on the lists, I'm sure. So, you know, whatever. But I mean, it's very disturbing that this is, I guess, one thing that parents need to realize if their kids are being encouraged to participate in protests. You know, you already just said that they're being confronted with Antifa people and being embraced by the Antifa movement. And then Antifa itself, it is targeting vulnerable youth who have, you know, are vulnerable, whether there's, you know, family issues, there's maybe some mental concerns, there's people who, you know, there is some truth with oppression in America, and that's overinflated and the grievance is stoked. And basically, Antifa is the cannon fodder of the woke Marxist revolution. That's what I call it in my book, anyways. It looks like you agree with me. And so it would be the people, if you were still in the Antifa people on the front lines, are the expendable cannon fodder for the elite that are trying to bring in this global government with these communist tactics. Do you have any other comment on anything to add to that, what I just said?
Yeah, completely. I 100% agree with you. And, you know, you start thinking about surveillance and people's phones being tapped and the government going after protesters and keeping track of certain people. People like to be like, oh, well, so long as I haven't broken any laws, they won't look at me. Every single time an Antifa protester goes out there and does something stupid or destructive or damaging or what have you, and it becomes a media scandal, you not only compromise yourself, your own technology, your own privacy, you've immediately compromised the privacy of everybody around you. So say you go out and you smash a cop car with a baseball bat. Every single person that was around you watching you smash that car with a baseball bat, the government now has permission to go in and track them. So the actions that are taken on us are also being taken on other people because they're being seen as related to the issue. So it's like we are putting other people in danger by engaging in behaviors. Any protester, right, left, it doesn't matter. Anytime something stupid like this happens, the government takes all these permissions, and it's not just one person they're going after. It's as many people as they can possibly go after. So I think you're completely right, and I think we're blowing people out of the water with us. I need to stop saying we. I think that's part of the brainwashing too. I say we, and it makes it sound like I'm currently involved in this. This was like 3 years ago. I catch myself doing that, and I'm like, ugh. But it's just kind of what it is. It's just dark.
As far as conservative Christian America, what can we do about this? I mean, what can we even do?
Spread the word. Educate yourselves. Pull your kids out of school at this point. Like, homeschool if you can. Find some. And man, I have a mother who's a school teacher in North Texas, and she's actually been really concerned with that rhetoric because her view with that is she's like, okay, well, take everybody off to homeschooling because all the teachers are crazy. Now you've left all the kids who can't get away because they're less advantaged with the crazy teachers. So it's like, so I don't even know if that's something that I can say, but definitely if you have grievances with a particular group of people based on their race, ethnicity, religion, like, go above and beyond to educate yourself on what that may be, whether that's Antifa or whether that's Nazis. It doesn't matter. Like, we have to educate ourselves as Americans, because like I said, there's bombs hanging overhead at this point. There is, like you said, a myriad of things that could happen in the next year. And there's a time ticking down. You know, watching movies is nice, going out to watch the Super Bowl is nice, doing all these things are really fun, but this is wartime. This is World War III. It has begun. Anyone saying it hasn't is pretending. We are one of the only countries that don't admit it, because they don't want it to happen like with COVID, to where as soon as they say that, all the stores are bought up, all the gasoline lines are filled, it will be complete chaos, and they won't be able to manage it, and Joe Biden won't be able to win the election. So they're going to have all of us believe that we're not sitting here on the edge of a global war, like there's not a secret invasion in our country, like we haven't been finding all sorts of shit, like our trains haven't been going into the water, like our factories haven't been exploding, like balloons haven't just been ominously floating across the sky, like a Chinese spacecraft didn't release 6 objects over the US less than a month ago. And then we have UFOs trailing Air Force One out of Las Vegas less than a week later. And you have UFOs on the Ukrainian battlefield. This is such a big awakening. It's more than revelation. This is just the reality that's been hidden from us for so long. Don't let World War III be another reality that they hide from you until it's too late, is kind of my message on that. Sorry for being hyped here.
Yeah, thank you. What would be your message, and in the off chance that anyone, well, maybe they will, someone who's currently in Antifa or associated with Antifa, what would be your message to anyone currently associated with Antifa?
Read more Nazi literature. You want to fight Nazis so goddamn bad? I got books for you. The Jewish Peril. While all of y'all are screaming from the river to the sea, this is where that comes from. Does that look like something a Nazi might enjoy? The Turner Diaries. A grand tale of white supremacists going on an adventure where there's like 10 dead people, 10 black people, every freaking page, talking about how white supremacists gets into the United States, or into the American people's consciousness. And it's essentially a white supremacist Bible that reads like a Batman comic. You know, read Mein Kampf. Read all of this Nazi literature, and then, like, really, really, really read it, study it, listen to Nazi interviews, listen to ex-white supremacists, and then look at those conservative Christians, cis, white, whatever people that you're so busy screaming at, and tell me that they're anywhere remotely close to the same thing. Because that's what got me out of it. The more I was reading these horrible things, and every single page is like 10, 15 N-words, and there's another gay guy and a trans person hanging from a tree, the more I'm like, yeah, this is not representative of my community. There are a few people in this community, and actually a large amount. Oregon has the largest concentration of white supremacists in the United States of America. So there is a fair amount of it here, but we're not fighting them. The whole time that when I was going in and I started reading these books, I was also going into the Nazi websites like stormfront.com. There was places where you could go listen to Nazis talk about current events. Not Tucker Carlson, not Donald Trump, real Nazis. And they were laughing. They were laughing, saying like, don't even show up to that Portland protest. Watch what these fucking idiots are going to do. And they were right. And that's what scared me the most is, you know, it's kind of the point I made with eugenics to Buck Angel. It's like, if I was really a Nazi and I wanted to implement eugenics and I wanted to breed out autistic people and gay people, I would just fund Planned Parenthood and sit back, not do a damn thing. Like, these people don't have to do anything. A lot of this is self-damage. It really is. And they know it. So you're so worried about Nazis, there's going to be a power vacuum. There'll be Nazis there. Educate yourself. But chances are it's not your uncle. It's not the TV pundit. It's not any number of people we've decided have been a Nazi in the past 5 years. Very different from actual Nazis. And not to mention, we disrespect every single dead Jewish person or person that died in the Holocaust or World War II when we make the consistent comparison of Nazi, 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 Nazi. And when it comes to funding Nazis in the Ukraine, crickets. When it comes to Jews being attacked in Israel, crickets. And likewise, it's like whenever Benjamin Netanyahu's government goes and does a freaking war crime, calling him a Nazi doesn't have any weight. Because you can sit here and be like, you've been butchering babies, your people have been raping and killing and burning and doing all the same shit Hamas has done. But whenever they hear the Nazi argument, they're like, yeah, okay, we're Nazis, just like all the rest of them, huh? And that's what we've done. So,
I mean, I make the point in my book and also in my documentary when it's out and I don't know how effective it is, but forgiveness. If we don't forgive the hurts that have happened to us, then we can be controlled by outside forces, can use our pain to control us. And if we can forgive for the people who have hurt us in our past, then we cannot be controlled by our wounding, and we can be truly free. Just, do you agree with that? What are your thoughts on that?
I agree with that one, and it's a hard one to swallow because I think it might be obvious from the way I talk about it. I have a very, 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 very hard time forgiving what's been done, feeling used the way I have, forgiving Antifa. But, sitting there and thinking about it and what that means, yeah, like you have to, because at the end of the day, for all the crazy, I think a lot of people out there acting stupid, I just saw them in their flash moments, and maybe they're like me and wanted to actually make change. And maybe I just caught them on one of their bad days or one of their bad cycles. And bad days is putting it very, very lightly. But no, I'd have to agree, and maybe that's something I should work on more as well.
I mean, the people that are getting caught up as Marxist revolutionaries, whether they would call themselves that or not, it's their grievance and their woundings, that is what is used as fuel for this fire. And if we can learn and teach forgiveness, I was really lucky, not only with being raised with the idea of forgiveness, but I actually worked with a business trainer years ago, and she had us go through forgiveness exercises and told us, for the rest of your life, you're going to need to keep forgiving people because people will continue to hurt you. And that's definitely true for everyone. And for some people, it's much worse than others. But in order to have a free society, we need free individuals. We can only be free if we're free from hatred. And that doesn't mean that, I mean, we still set boundaries with abusers, it doesn't mean we like open up the door and let the abusers in. But I don't know. I feel pretty powerless there's not much I can do to reach people in Antifa. But if anyone's listening, like, please, like, watch a YouTube video on how to forgive or something, or say a prayer or something, because we need to be able to move forward as a society and not be controlled in this way. They can get us fighting at each other's throats. Then behind the scenes, these people are grabbing up the power and trying to usurp our freedom in the process.
I feel like I said so much, and simultaneously there's so much more that could be said. Like I said, I think the biggest point I want to leave people right now with is this was all a distraction to help start a war. And that war is now started. So I think people need to figure out where their niche is, what their individual level of focus is. You've chosen religion and the Russian Revolution and Christianity and how it was subverted by communists, and you found your angle. For me, I'm an ex-Antifa member. I have my own personal stories. I want to try to bring as much of my personal lived experience into what I'm saying as possible. Everyone needs to find their niche. Everyone's an individual. Everybody's unique. One of the best things that I've seen this past year that made me want to speak out and even reach out to Buck Angel, just look at the detransitioners. I started watching those at the very beginning when you could count the number of detransitioners on your finger on YouTube. Now there's thousands. And because of that, the story can't be contained. Because of that, now legislative processes are happening where it's coming out that the pharmaceutical companies lied. And now legally, people are going to be held accountable, or it's going to be banned in certain states. For me personally, I want to see that happen with Antifa. Right now, I can count on this hand how many members of Antifa I've seen on YouTube. It's me, some other guy that wrote a book, and some other guy that went on Fox News. You are not going to find much. There needs to be a wave. And if there's anybody out there who has something very particular to them that they feel other people feel in this current moment, then get on camera, get somewhere, reach out to people, and try to have those conversations. Because I can promise that's what I'm going to do. Right after you, I have a list of 5 people that I'm going to reach out to, and I hope they reach back out to me. And I want to have a conversation with them. One of them is Benjamin Boyce. I love Benjamin Boyce. I saw you went on his podcast the other day. I'm like, all right, I'm going to shoot him an email. Let's go, because I have something to say. And because I know other people have very important things to say. And the more I listen to people talk, as I've listened to thousands of videos, thousands of people talk from all these different subjects, and you can take every single video and you can take an element of yourself from everything. Like, no one here is as alone as they seem. It may seem isolating because everyone's gone off into their tribes and their corners and their little cubbies, but really we all have this connection and we all have this understanding, and we know what's happening is wrong, and people want to hear that it's wrong. People need to hear from me, for example, that I'm sorry, that I am sorry for the destruction I caused to my community, to my state, to my country, to the world. George Floyd didn't just stop within the boundaries of the United States of America. It was exported all over the planet to where Hamas is talking about it now. So speak out. Speak out. Like, call yourselves out more than you call it your government, because until people start calling themselves out, I don't think people would seriously be willing to listen to me speak if I wasn't willing to take the time and self-critique. And that's something I've noticed in my personal life too, is because I will tear myself apart because I essentially turned into a Nazi. I went to fight Nazis and they freaking turned me into one. Or rather, maybe I turned myself into one. Maybe I shouldn't outsource the blame on that. But I have to live with that. I have to live with the fact that whenever people were out there fighting and that there was a redneck in front of me and he had a shotgun hanging off his back, that for a moment, three old Englishes deep, being at that protest for 2 hours, pissed off, livid as hell, that I thought about grabbing that shotgun off his back and shooting him. I have to live with that. How many other people were this close to doing something that fucking stupid and pulled back? That if they just share their stories, somebody else won't go out and engage in those types of things. And I have to sit and live with that I considered killing people, and that other people around me consider doing the same, and that they want to pretend that they didn't. And then I'm glad every day that I fucking didn't. But you want to know what? And I'm going to find this video and upload it to my channel. There was, and it might have been the Oregonian or the Independent or one of them, there's a video that came out and I was drunk and I was pissed off. And you just hear all these people going, all cops are bastards. And it's just going over and over. And who do you think's screaming the loudest? Me. And I can very distinctly hear myself in there. I'm going to find that again and I'm going to post it because I want to show people this. All cops are bastards. All cops are bastards. All cops are bang, bang, bang. Someone freaked out and started firing shots in the air. And then people started screaming and running and ducking for cover. Might have encouraged that a little bit. And there's a lot of other people out there who encouraged a lot of really messed up shit too. And you need to come out and you need to speak. And not only that, but the people that don't, you're cowardly. You don't want to be arrested. You don't want your family and friends to realize what you've done. We have to get past that, because here's the reality. They're not going to arrest me. For all that I've done, for all that the people here did, the people in Antifa didn't get arrested. There was cops around me the entire time I was misbehaving. No one came and grabbed me. I sat there for the past 3 years after leaving Antifa, scared that someone was going to kick down my door and come in and drag me the fuck out, being like, we know you tossed this rock, or we caught you in front of here, or we saw you spray painting ACAB on this fence. No one ever came for me. But simultaneously, I know there's people that are sitting down in their house right now, paranoid as shit, because you know you did something wrong. So I guess that's what I want to leave people with. Admit when you do something is wrong, because these have consequences.
Yeah.
Thank you for letting me rant on that.
No, I really appreciate that. I mean, what we're dealing with right now, what's going on with the schools and our culture, the rising generation is being destabilized in any number of ways. And Antifa is just one aspect of it. We have a group in Salt Lake City, Utah called Queer Marxists, and it's a militant queer Marxist group, and they have their pictures with their, huge shotgun rifles, automatic weapons. And the queer in the Marxist has the hammer and sickle. They're overtly communist, and they're radicalizing people. And we have to protect this rising generation from being radicalized. And for people who already have been radicalized, I'm very grateful to talk with you that you have been able to de-radicalize yourself. I hope and pray that more people can do that, just as you mentioned. I am just me. I don't have any special authority. I'm just going to post this on my social media, and I hope that someone watches it. I hope it's helpful to someone. I hope that we can prevent future violence. I hope that we can try to save a free nation. and God, I don't even know what else to say. How can people find you, Ty? Do you have a website, or do you have any way that people could reach you if they would like to?
Yeah, absolutely. So I started a channel. I actually got up about 24 hours ago. It's called Build Baby Build. You can find it on YouTube. I've tried to find it on phones and just type Build Baby Build, and I can't find it. So maybe type in Build Baby Build, Old Nick's Pub, Eugene, Oregon. And I uploaded a video in regards to a bar story that happened here. But yeah, if people want to come over to my channel, I'm going to get an email link that goes up, and I would love for people such as yourself to reach out to me and to have more of these conversations, because I want to get it out there that we are on a very, very limited time frame right now and that we need to act.
Yeah, absolutely. Well, I'm very grateful to have met you. Thank you so much. And I'll definitely send this link over to you, and maybe I'll see you around sometime.
I hope so. Thank you very much for having me. I appreciate your time.
Thank you, Ty. All right.
Take care.